What's up, crew? My name is Kelsey Lensman, and welcome back to Seek the Edge podcast, where our goal, our mission here is to challenge you outside of your comfort zone. That might be physically, that might be mentally, that might be emotionally, but for you to pursue and actually tap into the God-given potential that is within every single one of us. And I'm going to say specifically to you listening, this episode is not a coincidence. It was funny, I was thinking about different topics. One question I get all the time is like, Kels, why pursue challenges? It's physically hard. You go a lot, you break your body down a lot. Mentally, it's tough. Like, why do you pursue these things? And they're all also asking for themselves of, well, why would I do something hard because it's hard? And I know that might sound really contradictory. Kels, why am I pursuing the hard thing when I could take this easy path? And what this episode is not going to be is just me preaching, take the hard over the easy, and just me preaching a message that it's like I hear it all the time. You pop open Instagram and you hear this all the time. Do the hard thing, step out of your comfort zone. You've probably seen some of our content too with it. But what I'm going to dig into in this podcast, which is a little bit different from my usual content, is some of the research studies. What actually happens in your brain neurologically, what happens in your brain or in your body chemically when you pursue challenges and you face that discomfort head on versus you avoiding it and staying in your comfort zone. And I will tell you, I am the first person to love my comfort zone. I actually just got done with a talk I did with, it was about 30 fifth graders, fifth grade girls. They're my favorite for the ROCKS program. And it's all about stepping out of your comfort zone and building confidence. And I tell them every single time, because I never want to paint the wrong picture of me of I'm just this girl that's on a pedestal and loves to seek discomfort all the time. No, I'm very much human. My comfort zone, like I told them, is me sitting on my couch watching Netflix, or for me, it's a documentary with my dog Captain cuddled up next to me. Like, that is so comfortable and I love it. And there definitely are times that I put that on my calendar and I do it. Friday night, Saturday night, you will see me chilling with my dog. But also, it's not our goal in life to constantly seek that comfort. And I know emotionally we don't want to feel comfortable. We would rather the easy route than the hard route. But hopefully my goal in this podcast is to not just encourage you, but to convince you with the research and the data about why to do hard things. Not just because I hear it on Instagram, but really how you're changing your neurochemistry. You're changing your body. You're changing also your identity when you pursue challenges. And it's funny because when I did my 100-miler, which I'm not advocating for everybody, that was tough. But I had many people ask, like, Kels, why did you do that? Like, why are you continually seeking new challenges? And I do a lot of reflection on why I do things. I think back then, I'm still advocating, competing, and doing it for myself. But back then it was more from a place of lack. Now it's just because I truly love to do it. And I feel so alive. And I build amazing relationships. I always say, you will not build relationships like you build until you do hard things together. Like, it is another level of friendship and connection that you build when you do those. So, but I analyze a lot, like, why do I do hard things? And that's why many people ask me, like, well, why do you continually do them? And as I was reading this book, it gave verbiage to everything that I felt internally, because I felt, man, I feel so alive when I'm in pursuit of this challenge or in the pursuit of a goal. I feel so, quote unquote, on it, meaning just very dialed in. I'm focused when I have that goal to work towards. When I don't, it's not that everything breaks loose, but I can feel a little bit like, man, like, what's my direction? And this book's called The Comfort Crisis. Highly recommend. Michael Easter. Highly recommend this book. But there's two pieces of information that I came across that made me understand, because this is why we're also biologically wired to do hard things, and why when you're in pursuit of them, you not only feel more alive, you feel more you than you've ever felt. Like when I have this goal, whether it be business or fitness or relational, when I'm clear about what I'm working after and I'm putting in the work consistently, y'all better watch out. I feel more myself and alive, and like I'm really living in God's purpose for me than I do when I'm just kind of waiting and drifting of like, oh yeah, I wake up and I kind of do this. Like I don't feel as alive. I don't feel most me then. And so there's two pieces of information. One piece is the comfort crisis. Like I said, it's the book. It's actually, if you're on YouTube, you'll see this. It is right here. If you see this, you should see it. If you're listening on audio, you don't see this, but it's the book. I have it highlighted. I have it completely tore up with notes that I've taken. And when I was reading it, I've never read something where I'm like, they're literally in my brain. Like I get this. I understand it. And it's funny, in the first part of this book, which would scare some of you off, it says part 1, says rule number 1, make it really hard. Rule number 2, don't die. And you're like, okay, that sounds drastic. But it has a lot of science, and it says to embrace discomfort to reclaim your happy, wild, healthy self. Highly recommend. So number 1, we're going to go through some of content in there. But number 2, I was listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast. And for those that don't know, he's a Harvard professor. Not Harvard, I'm sorry. It's the one out in California. Now, Stanford professor and neuroscientist. And he has this podcast where he dives a lot into neuroscience. And it was funny because he was interviewing David Goggins, which if you don't know David Goggins, he's the kind of mecca of toughness, like mental toughness and grit. And I don't agree with everything that he has to say or the messaging that he has, but the ethos of challenging yourself to really uncover what's within is, I'm very much in alignment with it too. And as he was interviewing him, he was like, I was waiting to interview you to pull out this information, because as soon as I heard this new research coming out, he's like, it reminded me everything of you. Like it was so kind of Goggins-esque. And he said that there's this emerging research about an area in every single one of our brains. And it's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And that this area in your brain that they're now studying, it grows when you do things you don't want to do. When you seek that discomfort. For me, sometimes it's the ice bath that I really don't want to do. That anterior mid-cingulate cortex, that area in my brain grows. And the reason that this is important is because they've studied it and it's tied to willpower. And they found that the individuals that have the, I don't want to say biggest context, anterior mid-cingulate cortex, that biggest area in their brain, is they not only have the most kind of willpower within, they also live the longest and highest quality there. And that it's not just a seat of willpower, but it's tied to the will to live. However, and this is so important, this is honestly more important, when you stop doing hard things, when you stop pursuing challenges, when you stop seeking that discomfort, and we are comforted in the comfort zone, that anterior mid-cingulate cortex, as much as it will grow when you do hard things, it will shrink when you stop pursuing challenge, when you stop pursuing things you don't want to do, or that discomfort. And once again, that area is tied to your willpower. It's tied to also longevity. Like I said, they've studied that the individuals that have lived the longest have been the ones that have the most, either was density or biggest anterior mid-cingulate cortex, that area in your brain. And so it gives science, neuroscience, to understand, man, I'm seeking that discomfort, not because I want to live in discomfort every single day of my life, but because I also want a quality and a quantity of life, not just I kind of did the thing, I woke up, I lived my life, and then it just happened to me. And so the comfort crisis in that Andrew Huberman podcast, talking about that area in your brain, it was fascinating, because once again, it gave research, which we're going to dig into, to why to pursue hard and why to pursue challenges. And I was also just at a conference about 2.5 weeks ago in Utah. from James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy. And there was one guy there that he did 30 days of discomfort. And this discomfort could be everything from he dressed up in a suit and went to hot yoga, just like looked silly out in public that he would cringe at before, but now he's just like trying to do things out of his comfort zone. The second thing is he called an ex-girlfriend and FaceTimed her and asked him what the biggest area of growth, like just different things that it's not just the physical discomfort, but just putting yourself out there to allowing yourself to break out of our comfort zone and not be so affected by people's validation and feelings towards us. It was funny. I loved it. But why this matters and why we're going to give research to this is a Harvard study of adult development in 2012 found that long-term fulfillment comes from overcoming meaningful challenges, not just comfort. It comes from seeking and overcoming meaningful challenges, not just me watching Netflix with my dog 24/7 and just staying comfortable and just staying known. And it's funny because our modern world is designed for ease. Think about this. You have your phone, you pick it up. I could have my groceries ordered. I could have my next dinner already to the door before this podcast even ends by the click of a button. And I did it this morning, yesterday morning. I was like, you know what? I want to get this book. It took me 10 seconds maximum to go on Amazon, click, put in my cart, click, yes, that's my address, click shop or click to purchase, and it's going to be at my doorstep within a day. Like it is so stinking easy nowadays, which is beautiful. I'm not saying let's make everything hard. Technology is amazing things, but when we are constantly bombarded with ease, it's making us physically and mentally weaker. When I'm just bombarded with, well, do this easy. Now I'm just trying to seek easy out in every single area. And we don't realize the impact that it has on us and within us until we're confronted with a little challenge and it's like, oh, how do we respond to this? And I heard this on a podcast where our life is, it might be in the comfort crisis, but our life is so kind of easy to an extent. And I know different people go through different challenges, but I'm just saying our modern world, so easy. We're not confronted with running away from a gorilla or a bear. Like it's just, thank God, God willing, we have a roof over our heads and we have technology that we can reach people. God willing, not everybody, but ideally, many people that listen to this do because it's on a podcast. But that we get and our nervous system gets so flared up by if somebody cuts us off in traffic, it's like the end of the world. We're so irate, we're so mad. And it's because that quote unquote hard thing or that thing that we get so irate about, if we were a couple 100 years ago, the thought of even being in a car and not walking 20 miles is unbelievable. Like walking 20 miles is tough. Having a second of being 5 minutes late because somebody cut you off, that's not as challenging. But once again, our world is designed for ease. That yes, it's beautiful, but it's also making us very much physically and mentally weaker. And I don't know about you, this is not a mental toughness preach at you. But we still need to tap into, all right, we gotta lace up our shoes. We gotta, put our backpacks on. Like we're going into not necessarily battle, but we want to get better. We want to continually improve there. And so the first issue is, like I said, the modern comfort problem. And it says that the average American, the stat, I saw this and this was crazy, but the average American spends 93% of their time indoors. And over 50% of adults do not engage in any vigorous physical activity. And this is me not throwing stones, but saying, hey, we need to wake up a little bit. Okay. I'm so grateful I have a roof over my head. I am so grateful I have a capable body. But those stats are crazy, especially when you line that up with the depression and anxiety stats. It says here, sedentary lifestyle increased the risk of depression by 25%. And that's not getting talked about. We're not actually working on improving that much. Hopefully soon, but not much. And in the comfort crisis, they understood, like, where did our ancestors come from? Why are we kind of wired to do hard things? And they talked about a lot that our ancestors faced daily physical and mental challenges that ultimately built a lot of resilience. But today we tend to avoid discomfort. We tend to avoid the hard. We tend to want to take the easy pathway because also our brain is wired for it. Your brain wants you to survive, not necessarily thrive. And so it's going to use the least amount of energy, the most effective path, and conserve the most energy in systems that you can to not pursue the hard thing. It wants you to survive, not thrive. And so just because choosing the easy path might be the short-term delay, short-term gratification, it doesn't mean it's going to lead to long-term fulfillment. And so yes, if you're like, Kelsey, but I like the easy. I do too. We all do. Every single human does. I think you're crazy if you don't. You're kind of fooling yourself if you don't think you're initially wired towards that. Because inherently, our body, our brain, like I said, wants to survive. It wants to conserve energy because that means you're going to live the longest. But just because it's easy, just because our brain wants to go that route, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to the most fulfillment and also happiness long term. And one thing I talked to the girls a lot about today was the power of challenging yourself and stepping out of your comfort zone and building that confidence. And one thing I tell them a lot is confidence is built. It's not just given. It's not just for some people that were born with it, or you know what, you got the short end of the stick. And confidence, as well as that mental toughness, and that's an overused word nowadays, but let's say resilience, that mental toughness, that grit. I love the word grit. That it is built, and it's just like a muscle, and I will tell you anecdotally why I feel this so deeply. Is because just like a bicep, if I do bicep curls, it's going to get stronger. But if I stop doing bicep curls and I said, I'm going to stop doing it altogether, that bicep ultimately atrophies. It gets a little bit weaker. And I've noticed this with me personally, that whenever I've slipped into certain seasons where I'm not really clear on what I'm going after, and I really don't have any goals that I'm working towards, and I'm just in this season of complacency comfort, not necessarily good comfort, but like I'm just being complacent, I've noticed my confidence start to go down. I've noticed definitely I'll compromise more. I'll notice my mental toughness really start to go backwards. And it's all of the result of me stopping doing the things that I know that are really making me better, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And just like that, it's a muscle. And so how the body adapts to stress is small doses over time will trigger biological and physiological resilience. So for example, if I put myself in a cold plunge, it's going to adapt to trying to bring me back to that homeostasis, bring me back to that center. And what happens is when we stop doing those challenging things and we stop stressing the body, our little stressors become really big stressors. And so, for example, I brought up somebody cutting you off in traffic. If our nervous system is not really adaptable of different types of stressors, and it just really has been in that homeostasis for a long period of time, or that easy route for a long period of time, when that person cuts you off, you will not even be able to control it. You're going to go from 0 to 100. And the reason is your brain is just in this fight or flight, and it doesn't know how to handle these stressors very well. That's why we pursue putting ourselves in stressful, quote unquote, situations like a cold plunge or challenging ourselves in a gym, because not only will that physically help us, that will also change our nervous system to be able to regulate better. I notice consistently when I'm cold plunge 2 or 3 times a week, I'm not a very reactive person, but I notice this in my day-to-day. I just have a little bit more of a pause. Like my nervous system is a little bit calmer during those time frames, which then allows me to handle situations better. It allows me to adapt and adjust. And so if I were to stop pursuing that physical discomfort for just a little bit, I'll notice myself reacting a little bit more in my day-to-day. And so what we want to do is the hormetic stress theory. So we want small doses of stress, exercise, cold plunge, fasting. Not a big person to do fasting, but that can also be one. That triggers that biological and psychological resilience. And there's a beautiful study by that Andrew Huberman And his lab said cold exposure increases your dopamine by 250%, leading to improved mood and motivation. 250%. If anything increased me by 250%, I will do it in a heartbeat. And that's insane. And it's pursuing those stressors to allow our body to adapt and be resilient better. And last but not least is the reward of discomfort. And there's a Harvard study called the happiness paradox. And to summarize, it says that comfort does not lead to happiness, but struggle and purpose do. Challenge and purpose do. And an example is people who regularly challenge themselves report a higher self-confidence and life satisfaction. Those that pursue and seek the edge of their comfort zone. Those that really lean into that discomfort. It not only makes them feel better for a moment, but they report a higher self-confidence, higher life satisfaction. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And so that reward, yes, is physiological. That could be dopamine. That could be different hormones in your body, but it's also psychological. I feel better about myself. I feel proud of myself. I have more self-confidence that, hey, if I can do this one hard thing, what other hard things that I am stopping myself that I don't think that I can do that I might? And that's the reward. That's where when people ask me, Kels, why are you doing these crazy events? It's not just to gain a medal. It is not just to make myself feel good. But because I truly know what unlocks inside of me. It is this fulfillment. It is this purpose. It is this passion. It is the people that I'm going to meet. And when I stop seeking that and I fall into that complacency, it's like I'm two different people. It is insane how much that'll ripple effect in other areas of my life. It's not just the physical. It'll ripple effect in my relationships. I'll not want to show up as much in my work life. I'll not want to show up as much to my friends. And that's why it's incredibly important to really take care of you at the end of the day. But taking care of doesn't just mean put yourself in a bubble bath in kumbaya. Taking care of yourself means challenge yourself a little bit. It means show yourself what you're capable of. It means tap into the God-given potential that is inside of you. And instead of you subconsciously thinking, well, I can't do hard things or I'm not capable, why don't you look at that limiting belief in the mirror, in the face, and say, you don't get to control me anymore. You are no longer going to hold me back. And when we can break those lies, when we can break that psychological thoughts or psychological warfare almost in a way, or it's like this lie that I'm holding on to, you will be amazed how that will translate in other areas of your life, which is why I'm incredibly important about experiential things. This is not my pitch for saying, hey, sign up for an XYL event, but seek something that is uncomfortable. Do something that scares you a little bit. Because when you experience it versus just read it from a book, I could read The Comfort Crisis every day, all day, and I can say, man, this is preaching. Okay, you're convincing me. If I don't actually put it into action, it does not matter. It is not influencing my behavior at all. And I want you to reshape your identity to be somebody that instead of avoids discomfort and seeks the easy and maybe doesn't believe they can do uncomfortable things or do challenging things, I want you to break that belief and I want you to say, you know what? Today, not tomorrow, today I'm putting something on my calendar to experience me overcoming that thing or working through that thing or following through to the end. And when we can break that belief in you, oh, y'all better watch out. And so how to seek out challenges in your daily life? I guess it could be signing up for an event. Could be doing a 5K. Could be doing a Spartan race. Could be doing one of our rucking events. A lifting event. But it also could be, I'm going to add cold plunge for the first time. I'm going to do one time. Could also be, hey, you know what? Doing a digital detox. I am deleting social media. I am not messing with that, or maybe I'm really limiting myself. Doing something socially uncomfortable. I told one of my girls here, I was like, we should do the Uncomfortable 30 in March. We should do every single day, just like I heard from the event. Every single day we should do one thing that's uncomfortable. And actually, I'll pull it up. We started to make a list one day as we were out to eat. So it's actually a decently long list if you're seeing. So one of them is join a dance class, go to a karaoke bar, change your gym schedule. Not crazy uncomfortable, a little uncomfortable, right? Spend an hour writing. Ooh, no phone. Pottery class. This is silly. Wear a bold color of lipstick for a day. Ask to join someone for a meal out. For some of you, it might be going out to a restaurant by yourself, taking a selfie with a stranger, singing in the car with the windows down, listen to Beethoven in the gym, having a difficult conversation. These are just silly. Cold shower. What else? Just an hour speaking another, like just silly stuff, right? But the goal isn't for this to be like a mecca moment. Not every day should be a misogi where it's incredibly hard. But we want to push those edges. We want to challenge our limits just a little bit so it can really tap us into what's within ourselves, and that we seek validation a little bit less, that we step into our power a little bit more, that we're able to brush away all the limiting beliefs and doubts and approval that we seek and say, hey, you know what? If God's got me, I got me, we're good. Like let's keep making that step forward. And so an emotional discomfort could be having a hard conversation. Instead of avoiding it, having that hard conversation that in your gut you really don't want to have, but you know that you should have. And so just some closing thoughts here is I'm going to challenge you to embrace the hard. I'm going to challenge you to seek the hard instead of seek the easy. I'm going to challenge you to step out of your comfort zone, not just because we always talk about it and that's our mission, but because of what it does to you physiologically and what it does to you psychologically. You become a better version of you when you stop avoiding and start seeking. You become a more fulfilled version of you when you tap into what's within you versus pretend like it's never there, or believing that God didn't place all this potential inside of you. That, well, Kels can do it, but I can. And I know that's the biggest lie because I never think I could be doing the things that I am today. And so I'm going to challenge you to step up and step out. Let's do another podcast. Let's not just allow ourselves to feel good mentally, but not put it into action physically. And so I want you to do one challenging thing this week. It could be the smallest thing, like calling your ex-boyfriend and asking him the biggest area of growth that you have. It can be the silliest little thing, like cold plunging for 2 minutes. It could be the silliest little thing, like waking up and going to work out. It doesn't have to be this monumental, but I want you to seek the hard instead of you choose the easy. So if you want, I love this. Share that experience. Share what you did, what hard you sought out on social media. Tag Expand Your Limits. Tag me at Kelsey Lensman. And I'm going to challenge you to really tap into the God-given potential inside. Don't just pretend like it's for somebody else, but remember how your big part of the small part of your brain, your anterior mid-cingulate cortex gets bigger. Remember the Harvard study that long-term fulfillment comes from overcoming meaningful challenges, not just comfort. Remember that cold exposure increases dopamine by 250%. That's insane. Insane. Seek it. Don't let it seek you. And have an amazing rest of your week.